"Get off that property now!" The voice sliced through the calm like a siren. A man in swim trunks looked up from his book, sunlight sliding across his shoulders, confusion flickering just before realization. 3 uniforms stood above him, 2 officers. One woman in a Navy tracksuit, laughing like the law was her private joke. One officer pointed sharply, the other scribbled in a notepad, the pool's blue water reflecting their anger more than the sky. "You heard me?" the officer barked. "Show ID?" The man didn't flinch. He closed the book slowly, marked the page with a finger, and said evenly, "You're standing in my backyard." The laughter stopped. The camera of someone's phone clicked once. "Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to Marcus. The air felt heavier now, thick with authority and disbelief. The older officer stepped closer, boots scraping the stone deck. "We got a call about a suspicious individual near this property. You match the description." Marcus blinked once, calm, deliberate. Description meaning black, breathing, and reading. The woman in the tracksuit scoffed. "Don't play smart. Residents here don't just lounge around half-dressed by private pools." Marcus tilted his head. "Then maybe you should ask the owner what they do." The younger officer checked the ID Marcus handed over, brows tightening. "This ID says Marcus Hale." "That's right," Marcus said. "And this house belongs to someone else." The woman cut in, her tone sharp. "You people always think access equals ownership." Marcus's silence was louder than shouting. He'd trained agents on how to de-escalate tension, how to read a threat without becoming one. And yet, standing shirtless beside his own pool, he was the test case now. The officer leaned down, voice dropping but blade sharp. "If that ID's fake, you're in serious trouble." Marcus looked at him steady. "So are you." The woman folded her arms. "What's that supposed to mean?" Marcus's eyes didn't move from the officer's badge. "It means you're seconds away from a federal mistake." The words didn't roar, they landed, cold and precise. Somewhere behind the hedge, the phone kept filming. The world was already watching. The laughter from earlier dissolved into a nervous clearing of throats. The older cop straightened, uncertain now, but pride pressed him forward. "Sir, I'm going to need you to stand up." Marcus set the book on the table. "You sure you want to do this?" He wasn't threatening. He was warning. The pool reflected their hesitation, the ripples of something much bigger than one misunderstanding. A story about assumption, power, and what happens when calm refuses to bow to fear. Because in less than 5 minutes, every badge around that pool would learn the same lesson Marcus had taught for years. You can't profile the man who trains the profiles. The silence around the pool felt like pressure before a storm. Every second stretched thin between authority and arrogance. Marcus Hale stayed seated. His posture was calm but firm, like a man who had seen this play before and knew exactly how it would end. The older officer paced by the edge of the water, boots tapping the tiles. The woman in the tracksuit folded her arms with a smug grin, enjoying the scene like it was entertainment. "Sir, stand up and step away from the chair." The officer ordered again. Marcus did not move. "I am on my own property. That is not a crime." The younger cop shifted uneasily, his pen trembling slightly over his notepad. "Dispatch confirm property ownership," he said into his radio. A crackle answered back, distant and uncertain. The woman laughed again, the kind of laugh that tried to disguise fear as superiority. "You people always have a story," she said. Marcus turned his head slowly toward her. "You people?" The words came quiet but heavy. She blinked, realizing too late that the air had changed. Her authority no longer sounded like power, it sounded like proof. Marcus remembered another day, 15 years earlier, when a young officer pulled him from his own car in front of his apartment because his suit looked too expensive for that neighborhood. He remembered how that officer had apologized after learning that Marcus was a federal defense trainer. That memory flickered behind his steady eyes as he said, "You are repeating a lesson I already taught." The older cop leaned in closer, misunderstanding the tone completely. "I am not here for lessons. I am here for compliance." Marcus looked up at him, his voice remained even. "Then maybe you should learn the difference." The pool reflected blue light between them, cold and clean, while the tension grew thicker than summer air. The younger officer's radio buzzed again. "Still verifying ownership. System delay." The woman rolled her eyes. "System delay, right. That is what they all say when they are caught trespassing." Marcus took a slow breath. His patience was surgical, his voice cutting through the noise like a file note. "You are standing on my deck arguing about my address while I sit here in front of 3 cameras that will outlast your careers." Her smirk faltered. The delivery man across the fence whispered into his phone, "They are still going at it, man." Dude's calm as ice. Marcus finally rose from the chair, not in defiance but in dignity. His height and composure unsettled them more than any threat could. "You have 3 choices," he said quietly. "Run my name again, call your supervisor, or apologize." The older cop scoffed. "That sounds like a threat." Marcus's eyes did not blink. "No, it is a reminder. I train federal agents in restraint, in de-escalation, and in reading the room. Right now, you are failing every test." The younger officer swallowed hard. "Wait, did you say federal?" The woman cut him off sharply. "Do not listen to him. He is bluffing." But her voice cracked on the word bluff. Marcus leaned slightly forward, his tone level but piercing. "If I were bluffing, the SUV that just pulled up would not be marked DOJ." Tires crunched on gravel behind the fence. The sound drew every head around. A black vehicle rolled to a stop by the gate, tinted windows glinting in the Sunday. Marcus stepped aside and said simply, "That is my assistant. She has the paperwork you are pretending not to see." For the first time, the laughter vanished entirely. The woman's lips parted, but no sound came out. The older cop's radio clicked once, static rising like guilt. Marcus did not gloat. He simply said, "You called for a trespasser. What you found was your instructor." The pool water shimmered like truth under the sun, silent but undeniable. The black SUV door opened with precision, not panic. A woman in a charcoal suit stepped out, clipboard in hand, her posture straight and controlled. The badge at her waist caught the sunlight just enough for the word federal to gleam before she tucked it back beneath her jacket. "Good afternoon, officers," she said evenly, walking toward the gate. "I am Evelyn Ross, Administrative Coordinator for the Department of Justice Training Division. I believe there has been a misunderstanding." The older officer's jaw tightened, pride wrestling with realization. "We were responding to a call about a suspicious individual," he said stiffly. Evelyn raised an eyebrow, stopping beside Marcus without looking at him. "You mean the homeowner, Marcus Hale, head instructor for advanced tactical communication and field restraint." The younger cop's face drained of color. The woman in the tracksuit whispered, He works for the government?" Evelyn turned her gaze toward her. "No, ma'am. He trains the government." The air froze. Marcus remained silent, arms crossed, watching professionalism do what anger never could. "I have documentation here," Evelyn continued, producing a folder, property deed, identification confirmation, and his active federal credentials. "Would you like me to read them aloud for your camera, or just note that you refuse to verify them?" The older officer swallowed hard, his authority shrinking with every word. "That will not be necessary," he muttered. Marcus stepped forward slightly. "It was necessary 5 minutes ago," he said calmly. His tone carried no threat, just disappointment. The younger cop spoke, his voice small. "Sir, we did not mean," Marcus interrupted softly. "You did not think. That is the problem." The woman in the tracksuit tried to back away, her earlier confidence dissolving. "Look, I was just trying to help the neighborhood," she said quickly. Evelyn's tone was sharp but professional. "By calling armed officers on a man sitting by his own pool, you did not help. You endangered." Marcus turned to her. "Leave it," he said. "She has to live with it now." The woman looked down, shame creeping up her neck like sunlight on water. The older officer straightened, forcing a tone of false control. "We are going to file an incident report," Evelyn replied instantly. "Make sure you file the racial descriptor the caller gave, too. I want it word for word in your statement." He blinked. She continued, her voice quiet but absolute. "You will forward a copy to the DO Ethics and Oversight Committee. You have 48 hours. Marcus's eyes met hers briefly, a silent thank you. She gave a small nod, then turned back to the officers. "You may go." The words hit with more authority than a shouted order. The officers hesitated, realizing retreat was their only option. As they walked away, the woman in the tracksuit stayed frozen, the weight of her mistake anchoring her to the pavement. Marcus finally spoke to her, his tone soft but merciless. "Next time you see someone who does not look like you relaxing where you cannot imagine yourself, remember this moment. You were ready to destroy someone's peace because you assumed it was not theirs to have." She whispered, "I am sorry." Marcus nodded once. "Then learn." Evelyn closed the folder and said, I will have an internal report filed by the end of the day. Marcus exhaled slowly, picking his book back up from the table. You know what the sad part is? He said, his voice low but steady. I could run that same training tomorrow and half the room would still not recognize this scene as bias. They would call it protocol. Evelyn looked at him, her eyes reflecting the blue shimmer of the pool. Then we start again, she said quietly. We keep teaching until they see. Marcus glanced at the retreating officers, their silhouettes shrinking down the long driveway. They will, he said, opening his book again. Even if it takes humiliation to teach them humanity. The pool water rippled once more, silent and calm, as if nothing had happened but everything had changed. The sun had shifted slightly, painting longer shadows across the water. The sound of the SUV engine faded as Evelyn spoke quietly into her earpiece, her tone composed but deliberate. Yes, initiate internal review and file an alert under Incident Category 3, she said, then turned to Marcus. It is being documented. Marcus nodded without looking up from his book. The calm he carried was not indifference but control. Good, he replied. Let the record show how fast fear becomes protocol when color enters the equation. The woman in the tracksuit, still standing near the hedge, looked small now, her phone dangling uselessly in her hand. She had stopped recording long ago. Is this going to be on the news? She asked weakly. Evelyn glanced at her. That depends on whether you want to explain why you called the police on the homeowner for reading. The woman's face flushed red, then pale. I just thought... That was your mistake, Marcus interrupted, not unkindly but with the weight of truth. You thought instead of asking. He stood, the movement slow and certain. His shadow stretched across the deck, touching the spot where the officers had stood moments before. You live here, do you not? He asked. She nodded, whispering, 2 houses down. Marcus held her gaze. Then remember this. Proximity does not mean understanding. You have neighbors, not stereotypes. The woman opened her mouth, closed it again, and then looked at the ground. Evelyn finished her call and slipped her phone into her jacket. I have a transport on standby, she said. They will collect the body cam footage from the officers and the 911 recording from dispatch. We will handle the rest. Marcus gave a faint smile that did not reach his eyes. I have trained half the city's officers, Evelyn. They will be polite for a month, maybe 2, then someone else will make the same mistake. She folded her arms. Then we will handle that one too. Change does not begin with comfort. He looked at her and nodded. You sound like me, he said quietly. She almost smiled. I have been listening. Across the fence, the delivery driver who had filmed the encounter finally called out, Hey man, are you good? Marcus turned toward him. I am, he said, but the world still needs work. The man nodded, still holding his phone. It was wild, bro. They really thought you were breaking in. Marcus exhaled through his nose. That is how bias works. It arrives confident, leaves embarrassed, and learns nothing unless someone forces the lesson. Evelyn checked her watch. Do you want me to stay? She asked. Marcus shook his head. No, let them drive away first. I will finish my chapter. She studied him for a moment, then said softly, You handle humiliation like it is paperwork. Marcus looked back at his book, flipping to the last page he had read. Because that is what it is, an incident report written in arrogance. The woman in the tracksuit turned to leave, but Marcus's voice stopped her. One more thing, he said. She turned slowly, afraid of what would come next. You are going to see my name again, Marcus said. In the news, in your next security meeting, in the training manuals your police department reads. When you do, remember this conversation, not the embarrassment, the opportunity. She nodded, tears threatening but unfallen. Yes, sir, she whispered. Marcus nodded once. Good. Then maybe something good comes out of it. Evelyn gestured toward the SUV. We will see you Monday for the board review? I will be there, Marcus replied. We will make this part of the curriculum. The SUV pulled away, sunlight glinting off its rear window. The pool settled into stillness again, but the air held the memory of confrontation and the quiet dignity that followed. Justice, Marcus thought, was not about punishment. It was about clarity. And today, clarity had spoken loud enough for everyone in that neighborhood to hear. That evening, the heat still hung over the neighborhood like a memory that refused to fade. The pool lights flickered on automatically, turning the water into glass under the orange sky. Marcus Hale sat on the edge of the deck, phone in hand, listening to the low hum of Evelyn's voice through the receiver. It has already reached the regional press, she said. Someone from a balcony filmed part of it and posted it online. Marcus exhaled slowly. The sound came out more like patience than surprise. Let them talk, he said. The story will correct itself once the truth is public. Evelyn hesitated. The department wants you to give a statement. Something about unity and accountability. Marcus almost smiled. They always want peace before responsibility. He stood, walking slowly along the pool, the faint reflection of the sky breaking at his feet. Tell them I will speak after the review, not before. Understood, she said. And the homeowners association? They are in panic mode. Apparently the woman who called the police is getting threats online. Marcus stopped. I do not condone that, he said firmly. Ignorance does not deserve violence. It deserves education. Evelyn's tone softened. That is why they keep you around, Marcus. He chuckled quietly. No, that is why I keep going. He ended the call and slipped the phone into his pocket. The yard was quiet again, but not peaceful. The kind of quiet that follows a truth too loud to unhear. A soft knock echoed from the gate. Marcus turned. The same woman stood there, her eyes red from crying, a trembling envelope clutched in both hands. I was not sure if I should come, she said, voice shaking. But I needed to apologize properly. Marcus looked at her for a long moment, then opened the gate. Come in, he said simply. She stepped forward, the gravel crunching under her sandals. I wrote this, she continued, holding out the envelope. It is a letter to the HOA and to the local paper. I told them I was wrong. Marcus took it but did not open it. You do not owe me a letter, he said. You owe yourself reflection. She nodded, tears slipping now. I thought I was protecting my community. Marcus's voice was low but steady. You were protecting your comfort. There is a difference. She looked at him, guilt and gratitude warring in her face. Can I ask you something? She whispered. Anything? How do you stay calm? They humiliated you in front of everyone. Marcus looked at the pool again, its reflection steady and blue. Because anger gives them proof, he said. But calm gives me power. My dignity is not negotiable. The woman wiped her eyes. I will never forget this, she said. Good, Marcus replied. Then it was not for nothing. She turned to leave, pausing at the gate. They will talk about this for a long time, she said softly. Marcus nodded. Let them. Maybe next time they will think before they call. When she left, Marcus opened the letter, scanning a few lines before folding it closed again. It was sincere, clumsy, human. He placed it on the table beside his book. The night air grew cooler, brushing against his skin. In the distance, a siren wailed and faded. He looked toward the sky, whispering to himself, You can train policy, but you cannot legislate respect. That comes from within. The pool lights flickered again, casting ripples of blue across his face. And for the first time that day, Marcus allowed himself to smile not from victory, but from relief that at least one person had learned something real. The next morning, sunlight stretched across the marble floors of Marcus Hale's living room, warm and indifferent to yesterday's chaos. The pool outside was still, the water calm again, as if the night had erased every trace of tension. Marcus stood by the window with a cup of coffee, watching the reflection ripple against the glass. His phone buzzed with notifications, calls, messages, emails, but one stood out. It was from the police academy director. The subject line read, Immediate request for statement. He opened it, scanning quickly. The message was polite but heavy with subtext. The incident had gone viral, and now the department wanted Marcus to help control the narrative. He sighed and placed the phone on the counter. Control the narrative, he thought, when the truth was already loud enough. Moments later, Evelyn arrived, stepping out of her car in her usual precision. She carried a leather folder and the kind of expression reserved for bad news. They are moving fast, she said, walking through the door. The chief called a press briefing for noon. They are saying it was a misunderstanding. Marcus arched an eyebrow. A misunderstanding that involved 2 weapons drawn and 1 accusation of trespassing on my own property. Exactly, she said. They want you to stand next to them during the press conference to show unity. Marcus turned back toward the window, his reflection steady in the glass. Unity without accountability is decoration. Evelyn nodded slightly. I told them you would not do it unless the report included the bias clause. Marcus smiled faintly. You always know my answer before I do. I have had enough years to learn it, she said. He looked at her, more serious now. Evelyn, this cannot end as another quiet settlement or polite apology. They need to face what they created. She stepped closer. I know. That is why I am here. The DOJ is launching an ethics audit starting today. Marcus set down his cup. Already? Already, she said. Apparently, yesterday's footage reached the Senate Subcommittee for Law Enforcement Reform. You are trending, Marcus. He sighed, shaking his head. I wanted justice, not fame. Sometimes the world does not give you one without the other, she said softly. He thought about that for a moment, his mind flicking back to the moment the officers had ordered him up from his chair, to the quiet rage that had stayed under his skin. I have trained thousands of agents, he said, and yet every few months the same story repeats itself, different city, same arrogance. Evelyn placed a hand on his shoulder. Then maybe this time it stops here. The doorbell rang. Marcus frowned and walked over. When he opened it, a young black reporter stood there, nervous but determined, microphone in hand. Mr. Hale, she said quickly, I am from Channel 7. May I ask how you felt in that moment when they accused you? Marcus glanced past her, seeing a van with cameras waiting on the street. You want the headline or the truth? He asked. She hesitated. The truth, sir. Marcus folded his arms. Then write this down. I was not surprised. That is the real tragedy. What should have been shocking has become routine. The reporter's eyes softened. Do you think anything will change? Marcus looked over his shoulder toward the pool, sunlight glinting across its surface. Yes, he said quietly, because this time the lesson will be written by the man they tried to erase. The reporter lowered her mic slowly, realizing that was the quote she came for. Evelyn stood behind him, pride and exhaustion blending in her eyes. Marcus took one last sip of coffee, calm and unshaken. They wanted to control the story, he said, but I am still writing it. The morning air was light, but its meaning was heavy. Something had shifted in that neighborhood forever. By noon, the air outside shimmered with heat, and the front gate of Marcus Hale's home had become a quiet stage for the aftermath. Two news vans were parked at the curb, their cameras pointed toward the sleek black fence that separated his private world from the noise of the city. Inside, Marcus sat at his kitchen table, laptop open, scrolling through an endless stream of headlines. Every outlet had a version of his story, but none carried the weight of the truth he lived. Some called it a misunderstanding, others said racial bias at its finest, and a few simply labeled him the calmest man in America. Evelyn stood by the counter watching him. They are already rewriting the narrative, she said. If you do not speak now, they will own it. Marcus looked up, his face composed but tired. Let them have their headlines. I care about the consequences. The chief wants to meet, she continued. He says it is urgent. Marcus leaned back, folding his arms. He wants a photo, not a meeting. A handshake for the cameras. You are probably right, she admitted. But this time we control the frame. He looked at her, curious. Meaning? Meaning you do not go to his office. He comes here, she said. On your terms. Marcus considered it, then nodded slowly. Send him a message. Tell him I am available at 2 o'clock. Evelyn smiled faintly. I thought you would say that. 2 hours later, a black SUV with city plates pulled into the driveway. The police chief, a man in his 50s with a polished badge and a politician's smile, stepped out. He extended a hand as he approached, but Marcus did not take it immediately. Chief Danner, Marcus greeted evenly. I hope you came to talk, not to pose. The chief hesitated, lowering his hand. Mr. Hale, the department regrets what happened. We are reviewing all field protocols. Marcus motioned toward the chairs on the patio. Sit. Let us see if you can review honesty, too. They sat facing the pool, the same water that had mirrored humiliation 24 hours earlier. The chief cleared his throat. The officers involved are on administrative leave pending investigation. We will be implementing new training. Marcus stared at him for a moment before speaking. Do you know what the problem with training is, Chief? You treat it like a class. It should be a mirror. The chief frowned slightly. A mirror? Marcus nodded. Yes, because you do not fix bias by memorizing procedure. You fix it by recognizing reflection, seeing the faces you have wronged, and realizing they look nothing like the monsters you imagined. The chief leaned back, quiet now. I understand your frustration. Marcus's voice sharpened slightly. Frustration is when you are stuck in traffic. This was profiling, humiliation, and negligence wrapped in procedure. Do not minimize it with soft words. Evelyn, standing a few feet away, watched the exchange silently. The chief exhaled, rubbing his forehead. What do you want from us? Marcus answered without hesitation. Transparency, public accountability, and I want those officers to attend the next DOJ behavioral training under my supervision. I will teach them what restraint actually looks like. The chief blinked. You want to train them personally? No, Marcus said, his tone calm but edged with steel. I want them to learn the difference between fear and respect. That is the kind of education no badge can buy. For a long moment, no one spoke. The sound of the pool filter hummed softly between them. Finally, the chief nodded. I will make it happen. Marcus stood, offering his hand this time. Then maybe we both learned something today. They shook, not as equals yet, but as men standing at the edge of accountability. As the chief walked back to his vehicle, Evelyn approached. That was not a negotiation, she said quietly. No, Marcus replied, watching the SUV leave. That was a beginning. The reflection of the departing car rippled across the pool, and in that silent shimmer, the balance of power had already started to shift. By the following week, the story had spread far beyond the quiet suburb where it started. National outlets were now calling it the poolside incident, and debates filled the airwaves about policing, bias, and perception. Marcus Hale's name had become a symbol, though he never asked for it. Inside his home, stacks of letters and emails crowded his desk messages from people across the country, some offering support, others asking how to help, and a few, as always, filled with resentment. Marcus sat by the same pool that had witnessed his humiliation, now serving as his meeting room for change. Evelyn arrived with her tablet, scrolling through updates. The chief followed through, she said. Those 2 officers are enrolled in the DOJ course next week. Their union tried to resist, but the public pressure left them no room. Marcus nodded, his expression unreadable. Good. The point was never punishment, it was recognition. You got that, Evelyn said, handing him the tablet. And more. The Senate subcommittee is requesting your testimony next month. They want to discuss the integration of behavioral ethics training into federal policing standards. Marcus looked at the screen, scanning the official letter. It only took being thrown out of my own yard, he said dryly. Evelyn's voice softened. You turned a moment of humiliation into a movement. Marcus set the tablet down. No, the movement was already there. I just gave it a face. He stood and paced slowly by the pool, hands clasped behind his back. You know what I keep thinking about? He asked. That woman, the neighbor. She did not wake up planning to be hateful. She just acted on comfort, not conscience. And that is the virus comfort. Evelyn nodded. People defend what feels safe even when it is wrong. Marcus looked at her, his eyes sharp but calm. Then let us make justice feel safe. She smiled faintly. That sounds like a new course title. Maybe it will be, he said. The gate buzzer sounded, and Evelyn turned. You expecting anyone? No, Marcus replied. She walked over and checked the monitor. A teenage boy stood outside holding a small cardboard box, nervously shifting his weight. Marcus pressed the intercom. Can I help you? The boy looked straight into the camera. Mr. Hale? My mom asked me to bring this. She said to tell you thank you for not yelling at her. Marcus's face softened. It was the neighbor's son. Open the gate, he said quietly. The boy walked in, clutching the box. She baked cookies. She said she wanted to apologize again, but did not know how. Marcus took the box gently. Tell your mother I received her message. The boy hesitated. She was scared, you know. Not of you. Of being wrong. Marcus nodded slowly. Then she is already better than most. The boy smiled shyly and left. Evelyn looked at him as he disappeared down the street. You really think she will change? Marcus opened the box and pulled out a single cookie. If she can admit fear, she can learn courage. He tasted it, then smiled faintly. Too sweet, but honest. Evelyn laughed softly. Maybe honesty is the ingredient we have been missing. Marcus turned back toward the pool. Maybe. Or maybe we just stopped believing people could change. The reflection of sunlight rippled across the surface like a quiet applause. For the first time in days, Marcus allowed himself to breathe without thinking about headlines, policy, or perception. Just air, sunlight, and silence, the 3 things no one could take from him again. 2 weeks later, the morning of the Senate subcommittee hearing arrived. Marcus Hale adjusted his tie in the mirror of his hotel room, his movements precise and unhurried. The navy suit fit perfectly. Understated but commanding, he had chosen it intentionally to let his words, not his wardrobe, carry the power. Evelyn waited near the door, tablet in hand, running through the talking points for the 3rd time. They will ask about procedure, accountability, and emotional response, she said. They are expecting anger, Marcus. You are going to give them structure. He smiled slightly. I always do. The drive to Capitol Hill was quiet. Reporters lined the steps, cameras flashing as Marcus and Evelyn walked inside. The marble hallway echoed with footsteps and murmurs. When Marcus took his seat before the panel, the room fell into a tense silence. A senator leaned forward, adjusting his microphone. Mr. Hale, thank you for coming. We have all seen the footage. What do you believe went wrong? Marcus clasped his hands together, his voice steady. Nothing went wrong, Senator. Everything worked exactly as designed. The problem is that the design itself is flawed. It protects authority, not accountability. A murmur rippled through the audience. Another senator spoke. You are suggesting bias is institutional? Marcus met her gaze without blinking. I am not suggesting it. I am describing it. When policy allows perception to override proof, injustice becomes standard procedure. The chairwoman nodded slowly. And what do you propose? Marcus leaned slightly forward. We stop teaching compliance as control. We start teaching humanity as protocol. You cannot police what you do not understand. The senators exchanged glances, some skeptical, some thoughtful. Evelyn stood quietly behind him, her expression proud. Marcus continued, his tone unwavering. I have lived what your policies have created, and I have trained those who enforce them. Change is not optional anymore. It is overdue. When he finished, the room was silent for several long seconds before the chairwoman spoke again. Mr. Hale, the committee will review your recommendations. Thank you for your service and your restraint. Marcus nodded once and stood. As he left the chamber, reporters shouted his name, their questions overlapping like static. He did not stop. Outside, sunlight poured across the steps, the same light that had once reflected off his pool. He paused at the top of the stairs and said quietly to Evelyn, You see? You can turn a moment of humiliation into a blueprint for change. She smiled. And you did it without raising your voice. Marcus looked toward the Capitol dome, calm and resolute. Because power does not shout, it teaches. That evening, back in his quiet home, Marcus Hale sat at his desk, surrounded by soft pools of lamplight. The chaos of Capitol Hill felt distant now, replaced by the steady hum of the ceiling fan and the faint echo of his own words still playing in his head. On the television, a news anchor recapped the hearing, calling his testimony measured but revolutionary. Evelyn's voice came through the speakerphone, calm and deliberate as always. They have already clipped your quote about humanity as protocol. It is circulating everywhere, she said. Marcus leaned back in his chair, a faint smile crossing his face. Good. Maybe someone will finally listen. You made them listen, she replied. Even the chairwoman requested copies of your training manual. Marcus looked toward the window where the evening sky faded into soft indigo. One manual is not enough, he said quietly. We need a mindset. Evelyn paused before speaking. You have started it. That is what matters. A notification pinged on his laptop. It was a message from an unfamiliar address. The subject line read, From a student you never met. He opened it. The message was short but heavy with sincerity. Mr. Hale, I am a cadet at the police academy. I watched the video. You changed how I see the badge. Thank you for teaching even those you never met. Marcus read it twice, then closed the laptop slowly. That, he said, is why I did it. Evelyn's voice softened. Then it was worth it. He nodded even though she could not see him. Every second. The clock ticked quietly in the background, marking time like an old friend. Marcus stood, walking out to the pool deck where everything had begun. The night air was cool against his skin. The water shimmered under the moonlight, calm, endless, forgiving. He remembered the voices, the accusations, the laughter that once filled this same space. Now there was only silence, and it was finally peaceful. His phone buzzed again, this time a text from the police chief himself. It read, Training completed. They understand now. Marcus stared at the message for a long time before typing a simple reply. Understanding is the beginning, not the end. He placed the phone down, sat by the edge of the pool, and looked at his reflection rippling across the surface. You can change policy, he murmured to himself, but the real work is changing hearts. The water mirrored his calm, still and certain. Justice, he realized, was not about power or headlines. It was about quiet endurance, the kind that turned humiliation into history. Days passed, and what had once been a scandal slowly transformed into a case study. Across training academies and government programs, Marcus Hale's testimony was being played as required material. Clips of him speaking with calm precision were broadcast in classrooms where future officers sat in silence, forced to face the reflection of their own assumptions. Marcus watched this unfold from a distance, refusing interviews, staying off talk shows. He preferred the work to the noise. On a cool Thursday morning, Evelyn arrived at his home carrying a folder marked Implementation Review. "You have started something you cannot step away from," she said, setting it on the table. "The committee wants you to head the national curriculum on ethics and field communication." Marcus gave a small, thoughtful laugh. "I spent years building programs to train officers, not bureaucrats. Now they want both." "They need both," she replied. "Your story has become the example they cannot ignore." Marcus poured her a cup of coffee, the sound breaking the morning stillness. "You remember what I said that day by the pool?" he asked. "That power does not shout?" "No," he said with a faint smile. "That justice needs proof." Evelyn nodded. "You gave it to them." They stepped outside where the sunlight had just begun to warm the patio. The pool reflected the sky like it was made of glass. Evelyn stood at the edge, looking down at her own reflection beside his. "Hard to believe this was the place it all started," she said. Marcus folded his arms, eyes tracing the calm water. "No," he answered softly. "It started long before that. The pool was just where it finally stopped being ignored." A delivery van slowed by the gate, the driver snapping a photo before continuing down the street. The story had made him a symbol now, one he never asked to be. "You know they are going to want a documentary," Evelyn said, half joking. Marcus shook his head. "Let them document the system, not the survivor." She looked at him for a moment, pride and sadness woven together. "Do you ever regret it, the attention, the responsibility?" He met her gaze. "No, because now every officer that walks into a training room will have to hear my name before they ever reach for judgment." Evelyn smiled, the quiet kind that held gratitude. Marcus looked back at the water, the faint breeze rippling its surface. "I did not want fame," he said. "I wanted reflection. And now the world is finally seeing itself." The wind carried his words across the yard, and for a moment the silence felt like understanding. A month later, Marcus Hale stood before a packed auditorium at the Department of Justice Training Center. Rows of cadets and senior officers filled the seats, their uniforms crisp, their attention fixed on him. The program he had designed, Behavioral Ethics and Human Perception in Law Enforcement, was now mandatory nationwide. Behind him, a large screen displayed a still image of the pool from his backyard, sunlight glinting across the water. It was not there as a symbol of embarrassment, but as proof of endurance. Marcus stepped up to the podium, his voice steady, deliberate. "You all know the story by now," he began. "But what matters is not what happened to me. It is why it keeps happening." The room was silent except for the faint hum of the air conditioning. "Bias is not a malfunction," Marcus continued. "It is a habit, one you are taught to ignore because it hides under professionalism and procedure. Today we break that habit." He paused, scanning the faces in the room. Some were uncomfortable, some reflective, but none were indifferent. "You are here to serve the law," he said. "But the law does not work if humanity is missing from the equation. Every decision you make out there, every instinct you trust, carries the weight of someone's dignity. And when you forget that, you stop being protectors, you become the threat." The words hung heavy in the air. A young cadet near the back raised his hand. "Sir," he asked, his voice cautious, "how do you change something that has been taught for generations?" Marcus's gaze softened. "By unlearning it one act at a time," he said. "Start by seeing people, not profiles. Start by listening before reacting. And if you ever find yourself assuming someone does not belong, stop and ask yourself why." The cadet nodded, writing the words down as if they were law. Marcus closed the session with the same calm he had shown the day he was profiled. "Remember," he said, "authority is not measured by who fears you, but by who trusts you. Let that guide your every action." The room erupted in quiet applause, the kind that comes from respect, not performance. As he stepped down from the stage, Evelyn met him near the exit, her expression full of pride. "You did it," she whispered. Marcus looked out at the sea of uniforms, the very faces that once represented his greatest challenge. "No," he said softly, "we did it. And this time, no one gets kicked out." Outside, sunlight spilled across the courtyard, bright and endless, reflecting off the mirrored windows like water. Justice, at last, had found its reflection.